So your requirements change, and that's why I think it's important that they report every month. And, but what my saying is that when the contract was established, it was an evergreen contract, so it renewed every 5 years. And that's what it's done, and with no changes to that. The county has never asked for a time compliance to be in place. ETMC's never volunteered for there to be a time compliance in place because that changes how they function at that point. So if you put into place that you want in the city an emergency call, a life-threatening call that says that the EMS provider needs to be there 90% of the time under 8 minutes and 59 seconds, then that's what they're obligated to do. But that falls back on them to, if they're not meeting their time compliance, to add another truck at peak hours, then that falls upon them to have to do that. It falls upon them to meet that, whatever that goal is you set. And it's important that they report to you and you hold them accountable for that. Where that accountability has never been here because the contract or the agreement that's been in place has been so lenient, it didn't require those kind of reporting. So the county ultimately, or the city ultimately, has never known how many calls were truly ringing in a given month. Where the fire department and the police department, they have to every month they have to report to the council. How many calls did they run? How many calls did they respond to? Well, EMS should be held to that same standard, and it's not doing that way for 20 years here.
And ultimately, if the hospital board, approves funding for the interim, you would interlocal with the county, and if you wanted us to administer this performance reviews and then give y'all updates, that's what the county has offered to do, is handle that administration.
What is y'all's position, time-wise, for screening these 3 or 4 companies that are offering to do this, to pick the one that is not necessarily the cheapest, but a combination of being a reasonable price and a good service? Sometimes the cheapest is you get what you pay for.
Right, and that's what we didn't want to throw a number out because,
So when will you,
tomorrow at 8 o'clock, the committee, the 3 members of the committee and Steve Athey and myself are supposed to meet. I think it's at 8, isn't it? And then at 9:30 we have one. At 11 we have one company. At 1 we have Commissioner's Court. At 2 we have another company, and at 3:30 we have another company. And so every company is back to back tomorrow.
you all might get it all day?
Yes, sir. So,
In your contract negotiations, is anything being taken into consideration because we have the EMS building back here?
that was asked with Mr. Christopher, that definitely, that could be part of our negotiation to lower the subsidy. That and the, I spoke with the city about they would provide the water free, they would provide the garbage free. But yes ma'am, that was gonna be asked. It's definitely
They'll take that over a lot. If y'all did vote to offer that, which I don't think has never been formally voted on, but if y'all would offer that as a portion of it, that would affect their numbers.
absolutely.
It would be logical.
Well, the board, the hospital board realizes, for sure, I just want to assure you, we realize that we're going to have to carry a lot of the burden financially. Hopefully not all of them, but for the small, that's something else. And y'all going to try to book for 6 months, 9 months, a year? What do you don't know yet, do you?
No, the 3 years is what's going, that we're gonna ask them numbers for a 3-year commitment. We talked about 6 months, we talked about 18 months, but Steve Athey went to them and basically they all came back and said it would be the same number for the short amount of time because they still have that same capital expense that they have to put in, whether they're here or not.
I feel that if we go with a 3-year contract, we can get the numbers down some. Because the longer the contract, I think the cheaper the.
But let's keep in mind, we kind of got 2 things going. You
Yes.
negotiate the contract late, hopefully get the numbers down. But everybody looks at October 1 to start working on
ESD2 changes their charter, or we create an ESD3, or whatever, that gives election times to happen and the people to vote and to decide to shuffle it, but it's, they're still covered.
So really, realistically, we've got to plan on an interim plan. It's just a matter of how many months we're gonna do it for. And the board, as I say, we realize initially we're gonna have to bear all of the cost. But we definitely want to move into a situation where it's a shared responsibility for everyone in the county. Hopefully we can get the fire department involved. The city, I'm not sure how we're gonna get them involved, but something needs, it can't be just us. We don't have the money, and we can't, at this point, raise the money to do it. So, well, this board is gonna go into executive session in a few minutes. To discuss what we would like to be able to vote. Well, it's gonna be hard to vote without knowing the details of the contract.
We're in the same situation.
I think, John,
Everybody's in the
what you could do, my thought is that you could
So maximum.
basically pledge and do somewhat like the county did, that at a later date, when specifics are known, you come back to the men and see how they put it.
Another contract question that we have during the negotiations was, are you willing to operate under an MOU that gives every entity time to work out the terms and conditions? So that is a question that will be asked of them tomorrow. Will you feel comfortable working under an MOU? Because we don't know enough to lock down everything in the contract.
What's the MOU?
A memorandum of understanding.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
It's like, this is our game in, but we don't know what we're, how we're exactly going to get there. But
If I read it right, $50,000 is per year, not to exceed 3 years, is that correct?
Yes.
say that again.
What was the question?
The $50,000 that y'all voted on, not to exceed 3 years, that would be $50,000 per year.
Yes, sir.
And they were discussing 250 for the 6 months,
Right.
and they committed to 50.
Did the commissioners appoint the ad hoc committee members?
Yes, ma'am.
Have those names been published?
I believe so. Roger and the judge and John and there's 5. Who the other 2?
I don't think he's appointed.
They haven't appointed them yet.
We had a list of them at Commissioner's Court.
Oh, yes.
I don't know who those 5 were, but it was John, Roger, and the judge, and then there were some others that the judge had put out, but they narrowed it down to 5 and I'm sorry, I don't know those exact names.
But that was not my real question.
Oh, okay.
I'm sorry. Who are the 3 people that are going to look at all these companies?
That is appointed to be John Angerstein,
Okay?
Roger Dickey, Aaron Ford, and then I will be there to do contract stuff, and then Steve Aiken will be there from the consultant's point of view. But him and I are just there if there's any questions about contracts or whatever. But I am, but I'm, he's there for.
I think that we need to just discuss, what kind, I'm calling it a pledge of support, because until they come back with something current, but I think what they're looking for is just gonna fly. Are they gonna have, is there gonna be enough money to make this thing work? That's what I thought I heard in y'all's meeting, and I understand, because I don't think anybody wants to be in the position to shoulder the whole thing. Now, the question is the city going to be able? know, in talking with them, I think he's very willing, but I'm not sure that the money is available, the cash. And that's what we've been talking about, is using reserve cash. And I'm afraid the city's not in a very strong cash position. And so it's not so much of maybe lack of wanting to contribute, but it's just what is available to contribute. So, you know, I think in the perfect world, we would be looking at, you know, a third. But I don't think, we're not in a perfect world, and I don't think that's going to happen, because I don't think the city, like, not speaking for them, hopefully they will, but, kind of from what I have heard, there's the question is, what, if anything, they can contribute?
Mr. Christopher, on behalf of the city, I can't speak for my council, but on behalf of the mayor and the city manager, basically we're falling back on our fund reserve or our fund balance.
Right.
What do we have in cash at hand that we can touch? And fund reserves, I can't speak for the county, but you know, they have a percentage of their operating budget set aside, which is good. That's best practices, and that's good for them, as well as y'all do. The city, and any unallocated funding that we have in fund reserves right now is a little over $100,000. And if anything happened in the city of Crockett, just a major event or a storm, and we have extra overtime we have to pay for cleanup, we have a very small amount, which is not good on the city, but that's the situation. We're not going to bluff or play games. We're just telling you, we really do not have the fund balance that would allow us to really allocate much of anything. We're committed to seeing the EMS service. We'll do what it takes. The short and sweet of it is, any amount that we have to put in there to make this happen, we're going to have to do what we can. But we're asking on behalf of, you know, the city residents are all county and hospital district taxpayers. So a more fair, you know, that can all be worked out. You know, what's fair and everything else, but getting this ball rolling until our budgets are lined up is the question. And right now, we have an extremely limited amount that we could pledge towards, without putting us at risk in any other occasion if something happens.
Board members, do y'all have any more questions of the commissioners?
Are we in a position as a board to turn this over to the county now? I mean, or is that something, because it seems like the logical thing to do.
Well, yeah, I think it is a lot.
And they're obviously going to be negotiating contracts tomorrow, and is the county negotiating it, or is it us? So,
As I see what we're doing, the motion made by, that they would be administering the contract receiving. And that basically we are being asked, as well as the city, for a commitment for this interim period until such time as either the EMS2 or the hospital board, and I think that decision will have to be made within the next 30 or 60 days. So whoever, whatever entity takes it over, has got to be in statutory compliance with all of the budgetary and notices and hearings and all that, they will get the tax increase. And so that's why I think that's huge. You know, there's been talk about EMS2 being, you know, the proper place for that. The only problem is that they have to have an election. So I don't know what the time frame for all that is, and then you've got to start working backwards from when that first statutory requirement of budget and notices and hearings and public hearings and all of that. So it may well be, that's what I'm saying, it may well be that, you know, a month from now or so, that if the hospital board is the one that's going to have to look at being the taxing entity to provide the cash, for the subsidy. Not something, I don't think any of us are really lobbying for it, but the reality is we may be the only entity that's really in a position to do that.
I think, and the commissioners were offering to, and it's different. The county is the only governing body that has full-time elected officials. So they have the daily, activities that they can handle, where y'all
No, we
have
don't-
other jobs.
We don't even have staff.
And the city
You know,
council is the
that.
same way, so that's what they were offering, to handle this, but anything we work out together, y'all will be in on. That's all it was, it was just an offer to
Getting
administer.
back my personal opinion, even though we don't have a budget, I think this board's gonna have to pick up the majority and what the other, if they can, contribute. And realistically, the county's gonna have to negotiate the money, and we're just gonna have to bite the bullet and pick up what other people can't contribute. I see no other way that these other two entities can pick up and fund it enough. Now, it's gonna cash trap, it's gonna cash trap us like some
Yeah.
business, but we're gonna have to increase taxes, and it'll, like I said, it comes down again. I think this is very clear, when we're gonna have to go back to taxpayers, we're gonna have to raise our taxes to the point where we will be subject to a rollback. And if they decide that they wanna roll back, then they don't get their ambulance service. But I think I cannot see any other way around it realistic. I
No.
think that's where we are now, we're gonna have to pick up whatever, if the city can contribute. The county contribute as much as you can. We're gonna have to pick up the difference. And I think that's what the vote should be. We'll pick up the difference.
We're talking about the interim.
Yeah, this is the
We're
interim.
talking about the interim.
The
Okay.
interim.
All right. All right.
But even with the interim, us picking it up,
Mhm.
we're gonna have to raise the taxes because that's gonna take all,
Absolutely.
it's
I
gonna
mean,
eat our
take-
reserves, period. We're just gonna have to raise our taxes. We have such low taxes, we'll have to raise the taxes and roll back for it.
Well,
That's all
it
that's
it may not necessarily be, because there is some provision, I'm not an attorney, but there is some provision in there when you're adding a new service that it deducts in some way from your tax increase, so it's not deemed totally,
Okay.
as a tax increase. But, you know, I think we need to work on the assumption that it's probably going to be subject to rollback. If it's not, then that simplifies it, but even so, I think that, the people I talk to, I mean, they want an ambulance service. And, okay, if we have to pay for it, we have to pay for it. We've got that.
And I think within a week, you'll know the number, within a week.
Yeah.
And then at budget time, whenever you start